The Best Jobs in Ohio begins Thursday at 11.
Now, live from the studios of 1290 WHIO, your chance to take part in the Miami Valley's only midday radio talk forum. 1290 WHIO and Television 7 proudly present this simulcast segment of the Mike Scinto Show.
And good morning. It's great to have you with us. As I mentioned on the radio portion of the show, it's not necessarily great. I guess in one light, it's good to do a show like this, and the other, it's kind of difficult because it deals with someone, a colleague and a friend. Bruce Asbury, late yesterday afternoon, appeared before U.S. Magistrate Michael Mers. Bruce entered a plea of guilty to a single misdemeanor, charged with simple possession of 0.2 grams of cocaine. A disposition of the case will be made by the magistrate at a later date. Bruce Asbury was released on his own recognizance and had this to tell his audience yesterday.
Thank you, Neil, and I want to personally thank Neil Pugh and Skip Hapner, our news director, for being so supportive of me during this ordeal. Not everyone is so lucky to have an employer who looks favorably upon giving someone a second chance. With this plea today to the misdemeanor charge of possessing cocaine, I have now reached the end of my nightmare. But many of you who are watching are just at the beginning of yours. Those of you who are watching who are high on cocaine right at this moment are living a nightmare. I might say there are thousands of people watching right now, maybe even tens of thousands, who are high on cocaine or high on drugs of some kind. For you, your nightmare is still in progress, and there's only one way to end it. Well, there are two ways to end it, really. You can seek help to stop, or you can die. There are no old cocaine users. Everyone who does cocaine dies at an early age, and a terrible and gory death it is, I might add. You can also get help by approaching your employer or your friends and asking for it. That's what you really have to do. I was told by Deborah Countess, our news anchor person, that her father once gave her this advice. Now that you're in the public eye, don't ever put yourself in a position where someone can make an example out of you. Well, by using cocaine, I was put into a position where I could be made an example of. In fact, countless times I was told by the authorities that I would probably be prosecuted because they wanted to make an example out of me. So here I am, an example to you that cocaine and cocaine abuse can happen to anyone, no matter what your social strata, no matter how good a job you have, and no matter how much you despise the very idea that you could become involved in drugs. It could still happen to you, because cocaine is as easily accessible here in town as a gram of sweet and low, really. And I just want to say that if from now on, when you look at me, you are reminded of cocaine, that is all well and good, because it's a problem of monumental proportions here in town. And if that's the thought you get when you look at me, then this all will have been worth it, and maybe something can be done to eliminate this scourge on our community. I hope for your forgiveness, and I thank you.
Bruce Asbury with Neil Pugh, the Vice President and General Manager of WHIO Television. Your comments for Bruce Asbury, Television 7 Weather Specialist, when we return on the Mike Scinto Show on 1290 WHIO Radio and Television 7.
You can take part in the Mike Scinto Show by calling 457-1290 or toll-free anywhere in Ohio, 1-800-345-1290.
And welcome back to the Mike Scinto Show on 1290 WHIO Radio and Television 7. I mentioned at the outset of the program that it's a little difficult when you're dealing with a subject like this with a friend and a colleague. In one sense it's difficult, and in the other sense you feel there might be some reward to it. As Bruce Asbury, you indicated on the comments you made with Neil Pugh earlier, there may be some reward that comes out of this.
Well, I'm afraid that I will always be known as a cokehead, you know? There will be some people who always
will say, hey, there's Bruce Asbury, that cokehead, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because I've been guilty of that myself.
Mm-hmm.
But as I mentioned, if every time somebody looks at me they think of that, that's okay, because I did have a problem with it at one time, and at one time I was a cokehead. But if, when people look at me, they realize that there is such a monumental problem, and that the problem isn't just confined to one certain area of town. This problem is worldwide, but it's certainly county-wide and community-wide here, as I had said on radio earlier, and I want to emphasize here, that the cocaine problem is not just a problem in West Dayton. You would think, by looking at newscasts and reading the newspaper, that the only problem we have in Dayton is a crack problem on the west side, and that certainly isn't the case. There's a cocaine problem of monumental proportions in Oakwood and in Kettering and in Xenia and in Centerville, and unfortunately that kind of gets swept under the rug because of all those investigations that are going on the west side. But I just want to assure everybody that isn't the only place where it's a problem.
Why'd you do it?
I don't know. You know, I have no idea, and I've often wondered myself.
Because you're not a weak-willed person. I mean, I know you, and you've got a strong will.
In fact, it took me till I was 38 years old before I did it. You know, this is 37 or 38. I can't remember exactly which it was. It was, I think, 37. Mm-hmm. Nobody was ever more against drugs for the first 37 years of their life than I was. I never even smoked pot, mm-hmm. Which is something that rarely anybody my age can say. And I was very much against it, and very much proud of the fact that I never needed any kind of drug to feel good, because I always felt good.
Yeah.
But, you know, the pressures of being the weatherman, I guess, got to me. There was a time period there a couple of years ago where I was making between 170 and 200 personal appearances per year. Mm-hmm. Almost every day I was out doing something, personal appearance-wise, for our community, being a spokesman for this or that, or crowning a queen here or there or whatever. And the first time I ever did cocaine, it made me feel so good. That is, I was tired and run down. I tried it, and suddenly I perked right up. It was just like an over-the-counter.
It was an escape from what you were doing. Yeah.
And so I found out that I was able to function without being tired by doing this drug, sporadically. Whenever I needed to feel up, I would do it. And so for the first year or so of doing it, it was a very sporadic thing.
And unfortunately for those folks watching us, too, as you pointed out, there's a downside to it. You feel up then, but there's a downside to it, too.
Yes, there is. But really only after you become a fairly heavy user of it. The first few times you do it, there's really not that great a downside. And so that's why so many people get hooked on it. Because they do it, and they feel good, and maybe they go a couple of weeks, and they'll do it again, and they feel good. It'll get them up for whatever event it is that they need to be up for. But then when you get in a problem is, when you do it every single day, you have to keep doing it, because once you stop doing it, you get so down and depressed and feel so bad about yourself that you've got to go get some more and do it some more so you'll feel good about yourself again. That's what's wrong with this whole drug, you know?
We mentioned Neil Pugh, the Vice President and General Manager of WHIO Television, told us just before we went on the air on the radio side that the calls into the switchboard were overwhelmingly in support of Bruce. I think there were, I said 9 before, Bruce corrected me, there were 8 negative calls out of something like 200 that came into the switchboard. So certainly it would appear that the television audience is behind him. Let's go to the phones right now and say hello to Connie, I believe it is. Hi.
Hi.
Yes.
Bruce, first of all, I'd just like to say that you have my empathy. I think it's difficult enough to admit that you have a problem and deal with the problem, but when you're in the public eye...
the problem is magnified.
It sure is. And what I would just like to know is, I am a healthcare professional. 2 years ago, I worked in an area hospital, and And the problem with cocaine I just couldn't believe it. So there is definitely a problem there. My question is the availability. Can you walk into any, I think you mentioned you got started in a bar.
Yeah.
Is really, that is available anywhere?
Well, I think did they use the clip
Sweet and Low?
I think that the cocaine is just as available here in this area as Sweet and Low. You can just as easily get a gram of cocaine in this area as you can swipe a gram of Sweet and Low from Bob Evans. And so yes, I mentioned that I got started doing it when I went to a bar, and I at the risk of making some bar owners angry with me, I don't know of a single bar in town where you can't get it if you want to. Now, let me say this, though. The vast majority of the bar owners really have no idea that it's being sold there. I'm talking about people going into a place who have it. They see other people in there that they know want it, and they go over and they go in the restroom and make a deal or whatever. I do want to say that the bar owners in town, for the vast majority, have no idea this is going on, and if they did have any idea how much cocaine is being dealt in their bars, they would be completely overwhelmed. Back in June or July, a friend of mine who's a psychiatrist and who deals with drug abusers all the time wanted me to take a group of his fellow psychiatrists around to local bars to see, because many of them had never been in some of the dive bars in town, and he wanted them to see where these people who have problems are coming from. Where these alcoholics, where the drug abusers, or where these people are getting the problem. So we went on a tour we went on what he called Bruce Asbury's Underside of Dayton tour, and we went to one place, and it's a bar in Kettering, and a very well-respected place, and it's probably not, it's not one that most people have been in, I guess, but it's a very well-respected place. And as I was sitting there, I watched one girl in that bar make 5 cocaine deals. She sold probably 5 grams or more of cocaine to 5 different people in that bar. This was a Friday night, and I watched her make 5 cocaine deals, and she was doing it. Only somebody who
has been there
would know what she was doing, but I watched her make 5 deals, and I pointed out to the psychiatrists when I saw her do the first one. I said to the psychiatrists who were with me, I said, the girl there in the jeans has just sold a gram of cocaine to a man. Let's watch her. I'll bet she's in here and going to sell some more. Sure enough, she sold to 4 more people. The psychiatrists never did see her make the deal. They never did see the cocaine pass from hand to hand.
But you knew it did.
But I saw it. I saw it. It was very simple. When you do it, you know the method of doing it.
Connie, thank you. We have just a little less than a minute before we have to take a break, Bruce. But she brought up an interesting point. Connie brought up an interesting point about being in the limelight. And we were talking about that during the break. I don't recall an awful lot of, if people think you get off easy because you're in the limelight, I don't recall an awful lot of people who, the headline on the leading news station in the city is, he pleaded to possessing 2/10 of 1 gram of cocaine.
Yes, and this is a misdemeanor charge. I doubt that there's ever been a case in the history of this town where a person who pleads guilty to a misdemeanor is the lead story on every newscast on all 3 stations, and is on the front page at the top of the big headlines in the paper. That I doubt has ever happened before, but it's because of who I am that it happened, of course, and I realized that, and I knew that if this ever came out, that it would be that way, and so I accept it.
All right, back with more of weather specialist Bruce Asbury from Newscenter 7 as the Mike Scinto Show continues on 1290 WHIO Radio and Television 7. Diana, you're on the air with Bruce Asbury, weather specialist for Newscenter 7.
Good morning, Mike and Bruce. I just want you to know, Bruce, honey, I admire your honesty, and half of the battle is admitting that you have a problem, and the rest of it is rectifying it.
Well, actually, I think admitting it probably is a little more than half the battle, because if there's one thing that a drug abuser or a person who has a problem with drugs, if there's one thing they don't want everybody to know, it's that they have a problem with it. And I think that admitting that there's a problem is even more than half of the battle. You admit it, and then you go from there. So I thank you for that.
All right, and thank you very much for calling. We say hello to Maxine. You're on the Mike Scinto Show on 1290 WHIO Radio and Television 7.
Yes, I'd like to commend Bruce for getting up in front of all the millions of people and admitting he had the problem. And we're still behind you, Bruce, and if more people would admit they had a problem and so we could help them, then we could get them help and get the dealers off of the streets, which is the ones we need to get a hold of first.
Well, you're right, and unfortunately, I think most of the police work in the area, and I have to be somewhat critical because I don't think I really don't think that the police even realize what a big problem this is, and I don't think they really are schooled enough in the methods of drug dealers. I mentioned the girl, the young girl that I saw who made 5 cocaine deals in a bar that I was in one time. I really doubt that
most police officers would have been able to spot it.
That police officer would have been able to spot it. Yeah, I really don't think they know the methods. And here's what I think can solve the whole problem: make a cocaine addict a police officer, and have him go out and do nothing but observe and make cocaine bites.
That's an interesting theory.
If they're going to do it, that's the only way to do it. What they do now is they arrest somebody who is a user and try to get them to rat on somebody who's a dealer, and that's not the way to go about it, because anybody who does that is going to get killed in all likelihood. But I think the best deal would be for a cocaine addict to be hired as a police officer and send them out.
Interesting concept. It has to make you feel good, though. You're getting the support.
Well, yes, it does, and I do appreciate that.
Hi, Jerry.
Hi.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Bruce, I really like you, and I'm proud of you for coming on the air, but my family, some of them are involved in taking cocaine. One is missing for over a year, presumed dead. But when a person reaches the end of their rope and they don't have money to go see anybody with, just where can they go or what can they do so that their children do not get involved in taking drugs, because I can see this is where this is headed.
Yeah, I understand. Pardon me, I understand perfectly. There are... if you want to call me later on, I can give you the name of an excellent doctor who can make sure that whoever you want to get treatment will get treatment, and this is a problem that we can't worry about how much it's going to cost or whatever. If you can't afford to pay for it, I'm sure there'll be something worked out to where it'll be free, but I can give you a couple of names.
Hey, Jerry, thank you very much. Before we take a break, Bruce, this is probably the toughest question I've asked you. I want you to put yourself in the position you were in before you were 37 years old and you didn't use drugs, and you made comments about people who did. These people who are calling up and being so nice, and our station, WHIO, for giving you... Why should they? Why should they forgive Bruce Asbury? I mean, you were in the public eye, and you were here to, I assume, an example goes along with that. Why should they forgive you? Well,
I was thinking that very same thing, and I'm not sure that they should forgive me, and I don't expect them to forgive me for what I did, because what I did was a terrible thing. So don't forgive me for that. Congratulate me, however, if you want, for recognizing that I had a problem and for stopping before I became addicted and before I did something that would have been horrible, like kill myself or something like that.
Could you see that time somewhere down the road that you would have gotten that bad if you'd have kept on?
Oh, I think so, and I think that's the only end for someone who's an addict, cocaine addict, if they become an addict. I think there are only two ways to go. One is to get help and stop, or stop and then get help. Make up your mind to stop and get help, or you will die. I mentioned on the clip on the news last night that there aren't any old cocaine users.
Mm-hmm.
They all die a young death at a young age.
Okay. Newscenter 7 weather specialist Bruce Asbury with us on the Mike Scinto Show on 1290 WHIO Radio and Television 7. And on it. We're back with weather specialist Bruce Asbury from Newscenter 7. Just a couple of minutes left, and we had a question during the radio portion of the show, and sometimes I forget that it was asked then, and the television folks didn't get a chance to hear it. Was this some kind of and the question came up, was this a contrived thing? The fact that it happened 2.5 years ago, and all of a sudden now it's coming out, it's a headline on all the television stations. Was this planned this way, or why didn't it come out sooner?
No, I was the offense that I pleaded guilty to yesterday occurred 2.5 years ago. I was not informed that I had been observed doing what I did until 1 year after, more than a year after the offense had occurred. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until this past July that the U.S. Prosecutor's Office had said they were going to proceed with criminal proceedings against me, and they set a January 30th date, 1989, as the date that I would appear in court. Why it took 2.5 years, you'd have to ask the prosecutor, because I personally would like to have gotten it over with 2 years ago. I wouldn't be sitting here today. I'd have done it 2 years ago, and I wouldn't be here today doing it. So you'll have to ask the prosecutor.
This wasn't your plan.
It certainly wasn't my plan, no.
And you will be back at work on Wednesday, and things are going to go as normal.
Well, I certainly hope so. I'll be normal anyway.
All right.
I hope.
Well, from all of us on the radio side and television side as well, and I think Jim Baldridge said it, with our prayers and support, hopefully you'll be able to beat this thing, and obviously you've got the support of the people in the audience. So, Bruce, good luck to you.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thanks to everyone out there who has supported me in the past and continues to do so.
Thank you, sir. Weather specialist Bruce Asbury, and we'll be back for more radio talk right after we take a break on the Scinto Show.
This simulcast segment of the Mike Scinto Show was a presentation of 1290 WHIO Radio and Television 7. Join us tomorrow morning for another exciting guest and conversation. The Mike Scinto Show can be heard weekdays from 9 till 1 on AM 1290 WHIO.